It is Friday, March 25th. We're back here with State Representative Charlie Kimbell, who has miraculously made it home on a Friday before the sun sets. How's that feel, Charlie?
Very unusual. I mean, it
Yes.
feels I think it's kind of typical of the week after crossover when you put in a lot of time and then you pass out all the bills you need to and then you go home. So it's nice to see the sunshine.
Yeah. And so, what kept you busy this week?
Well, this was a very busy week for our committee, so we passed out a very large workforce development bill. And my committee, the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, we worked with all the different committees in the House and tried to get in different elements of workforce development. So we put in, I think it's $41.9 million, which is pretty significant. And it's a combination of a lot of different things. Part of it is looking at how to retain and recruit nurses and nursing faculty by providing scholarships and loan forgiveness, and also for physicians' assistants on the loan forgiveness piece. So there's a lot of money in those programs. We're doing a lot around career and technical education centers. We've got a study that is supposed to come up with a new funding and governance model that we can start to try to implement, because that's often a thing that stands in the way of students going to a career and technical education center. Some of the guidance counselors may not make it something that's available to the students because the sending school stands to lose money when they do that. And also there's a governance issue that has plagued the career and technical education system ever since it was created. That's one of the pieces. Another is for students who want to take an adult education course at one of the career and technical education centers. So for them, they can't take those courses. There's no money for it in the budget. They can take the courses during the day, of course, but they can't take like a welding or a nursing course is offered as part of the adult education program unless they receive some kind of special dispensation. So we set up a fund for that. It's $100,000 to do that. And then we set up this thing with career and technical education centers, which is a $15 million revolving fund that enables them to purchase properties and use the students and not use the students, but expose the students to all the things about how do you purchase and renovate a blighted property? What are all the things that are involved in that? Or you could be looking at those students building new housing. And it's been done around the state for a long time. There's 15 CTEs that have building trades programs. But this really gives them the capital to do what some of them have been unable to do by providing them with the money for that. So that's a tremendous program by itself. So that, and we've got an incentive program that's in there for college graduates. We're trying to keep the college graduates here in Vermont, but it's an interesting thing. We've got 40,000 college students in Vermont. 60% of them are from out of state. So, and we're looking to really increase the number of people who are working in the state. This is one creative way we looked at doing is like, well, let's get the people who are already here because they chose to come here for school and give them an incentive to stay here. So it's a $2.5 million pilot project to give them a $5,000 forgivable loan. So that means that if they leave before 2 years is over, they owe the money back. So it's kind of a creative way to do that. And then we also have, some other things, money for the Vermont Professionals of Color Network to try to help BIPOC-owned businesses really navigate the resources they need in order to become successful. And you may say, well, we don't need another system for that, but we found a lot of cases in which those BIPOC businesses don't get equal access. So that's another study that's in there. So there's just a ton of different programs that we have in this bill that I think is really good. So it took us Thursday, yes. We were we explained this to our colleagues in the House on the floor for, I think, 2.5 hours. And I don't think they liked the fact that we were keeping them on the floor that long because we had to talk about the budget after that, which is a $8.1 billion budget. And this bill was only 41.9 million, but it has a lot of impact on the workforce.
And it just ties in kind of nicely with an event we were at this morning. So Rebecca, who works here with me, and I were both sit on this advisory committee for one of the technical centers, River Valley Technical Center in Springfield. And as we sat in on that advisory committee meeting, we heard a lot of excitement in the room about the emphasis now on technical education and money that is now potentially going to be available for the development of these programs. One of the concerns that I hear is having the money to develop these programs is great, but we need more students to go into into these schools, into the technical centers, because they have been declining enrollment.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is demographics, where we don't have as many students in the general K through 12 system as we did years ago, so there's fewer potential students to go in there. But no, that's part of the governance and financing issue. So if a sending school has a student that would be better suited in learning at a career and technical education center, either because they have an interest there or they learn differently. A lot of kids learn better with their hands and by doing something, experiential learning. Then they should be going to a career and technical education center. But I've talked to some, I would say, vocational arts instructors at a regular high school, not a career and technical education center, and they've been instructed by their principal to figure out any way they can keep the student there instead of losing the student to the career and technical education center. Well, who's better off for that? The student would really benefit by going to the CTE. So we're trying to figure out in this bill that we just passed how to address that finance problem, where the sending school doesn't lose money by having that student leave. It's tough. I mean, if you're at a sending school and you have to travel 30 minutes to go to the career and technical education center, that's a big part of the day. So oftentimes you have to get to the school, your sending school, early in order to get on the bus, in order to go to the CTE, have your courses, and then get back on the bus, go back to your school, and then go home from there. So we talked to some people where they would have to get on the bus at 6:30 in the morning in order to go to school, in order to get on the bus to go to the CTE. So it's a big commitment. Then you leave your support system back at the school you're leaving sometimes, because maybe your peers aren't going to go to the career and technical education center because they're on a different path. So it's a tough decision for kids in high school, and I think part of it is convincing the parents and talking directly to the parents to say, this is a good option. This is a great thing for your student to be able to learn skills and be able to earn money right away. And they don't have to go off to a college program for which they're not really sure they want to go anyway, but figure, I should go because, that's what you do. And then they find themselves in debt. For an average Vermont student has $35,000 in college debt. And, for what? Oftentimes they have no idea. Students will go and get let's just say a degree in Greek mythology. And they come out of school with a degree in Greek mythology, which is great. I mean, I love Greek mythology. But then, what can I do with that? How much money can I earn with that degree? And it's not always, the degree doesn't always matter as to what you do. I mean, but it does help where they could really get the skills and some certifications that they need at a CTE and be earning $80,000, $90,000 in something they enjoy doing. I mean, that's great. But you're right. It is that, how do we get more students to go to the career and technical education center? Is it the right place for them? Do we look at the overlapping programs that exist at high schools? We've got STEAM programs or STEM or STEAM programs at some of the high schools. Does that compete with kids going to the career and technical education centers? I think so. We had a study done by the Agency of Education, and they tried pilot programs, and River Valley Technical Center was one of the pilot programs, but it was more of a study than anything else. They didn't really switch up the governance or that kind of stuff. They said, okay, what if we financed it this way? And it was a different funding construct. And now the next study is to say, okay, how can we actually implement something? And here's the roadmap to implement it, to take away this conflict and this friction. so that people have a clear path to go in there. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And we've been dealing with this in the legislature since I first joined in 2017. In 2018, we passed a massive bill on workforce development. Talked about better coordination between the career and technical education centers and the high school, the adult programs at CTEs with Community College of Vermont. We talked about how all the flows up into different certification programs, the intersection of the private industry with CTEs. You know, the regional advisory board is probably what you're on in Springfield, is an important element to influence what curriculum they teach, what the businesses need, you know, what's the opportunity. They're active in some of the CTEs, but others, you know, if you're on the school board and then you get appointed to the regional advisory board, like, you're just tired. I mean, it's hard enough being a school board member, but then to go and try to be productive member of another board, of the regional advisory board, of the CTE, that's tough. I think it's really hard. So we're trying to figure it out. And the people that are in it, that are working directly with students, you'll see their graduation or their placement rate in either course of further degree or certification and getting a job is much higher at CTEs than it is at high schools. I think it's over 90%. In a high school, the graduation or the plans to go on to further academic pursuit is, I think, 65% or so for high schools to go on to a 2-year or 4-year degree. So the placement rate and the success rate is so high at CTEs. So they're jewels. They're really jewels in the rough.
And so the CTE money, I guess that's one part of your workforce development bill. So just in general, taking a step back, you said you spent 7 hours last night on the floor talking about this bill. I mean, where did it go from there? Where is it headed?
Yeah, we used a bunch of money from the general fund surplus that we have from tax revenues for this current fiscal year. And so it's a lot of one-time money. So these are one-time programs that we've stood up to really try to get it a very important investment in workforce development. So we've passed it in the House, and now it goes over to the Senate. The Senate hasn't seen our bill yet. We're going on Tuesday to go talk to the Committee of Jurisdiction about this, on which Senator Clarkson is a member of the Senate Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, I believe. So we're talking to them on Tuesday to give an introduction to the bill, and they have to decide then, are they going to take it up? They don't have to. We think they should. This is a priority for the state. I think this is the largest challenge that faces the economy in the state of Vermont right now, is available workforce today and in the future. So that's the biggest challenge that we've got. So anyway, so they'll take testimony from the same people that we heard from probably 100 people. We interviewed people from the career and technical education centers. We talked to people in the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, business owners, you name it. So the list is really long because we wanted to see, are there barriers to people actually working now? And what are those barriers? And can we address those? Is it licensing? Is it benefits? Is it education and training? So what of those can we address? For instance, some people didn't want to, there are those that are not working right now, but are interested in working, and perhaps they're retired. Well, if they go back to work, then they could lose some of their retirement benefits. And if it's not retirement benefits, then they might lose some of their health care benefits. So just by going into that little slightly upper bracket, if they did that, it could cost them $12,000 a year. So so can we do something on that line? We did something for that with teachers who are retired to go back and teach, and it doesn't hurt them in terms of their pension. So we did that when we looked at these long-term relationships. We've got the Department of Labor. We're standing up a pilot program. They're going to put 3 people in distinct areas throughout the state to really work more closely on a regional basis with employers, employees, and training providers to try to really get a better coordination going. Now, Springfield is doing something cool. They're doing the Working Communities Challenge. It's a great program. Their goal is to increase the labor participation rate. But part of that is dealing with what do people need for childcare? What do people need for transportation? Do they need a laptop computer? Do they need additional training? So they're really spending a lot around that whole program to figure out what it is to see if they can increase participation rate. And there's Bob Flint and Amanda, can't remember her last name, they're doing a great job with that.
Well, one thing a community like Springfield has going for it, which is not true for a vast majority of the state, is really high-speed broadband.
Oh my God,
They have
yes.
some of the fastest internet in the country,
Yeah.
and so that, I think a lot of folks are trying to, develop an economy around that.
Yeah, I mean it is. You can't get any faster, and so it's critical for any part of Vermont or any part of the economy to have that high-speed broadband. But their excess of speed is fantastic. It doesn't by itself make it so that it's going to suddenly be economically successful, but it takes programs like what's going on at the BRIC, the Black River Innovation Campus, and it takes innovative people that are in the workforce development and economic development areas. So Matt Dunn is doing a bunch of work in Springfield with BRIC and also with his Rural Innovation Center. They're trying to provide some housing on the campus of where BRIC is located in the old school building. But then it's a question of, well, where do you get the financing for that? So but in talking to Matt, I think they have stood up a number of new companies. Somebody from Springfield, a native, came back to say, I want to start my company in Springfield. Well, that's fantastic. It could really transform Springfield from its industrial history into one that's a modern economy-based economy, and that would be fantastic for a town like Springfield. You've got people that are really committed to it. You've got Bob Flint, Scott Farr, and everyone else involved in the town, and they're really motivated. And that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
That sounds like this bill has really been taking up a huge chunk of your time and energy in committee and in the General Assembly.
Yeah.
You had safe assessment.
Yeah, my time in particular, I mean, I was the main presenter of the bill, which means you really have to provide a general overview. It takes a lot of prep work. It's 70 pages. It's all different sections of law. It's dealing with different titles within the statutes. So if you really want to be knowledgeable, you have to read those different statutes to be able to say, okay, this is changing this and this is why. Like for instance, we had an existing part in the statute about internships and returnships. And it had been suggested to us that we repeal those different sections and create a new section. Well, the question was, well, why are we doing this? And it provides more flexibility and streamlines what internships could be. And really it's paid work-based learning opportunities that end up qualifying someone to get a job. Now that's really what we're talking about. Whereas before they were paid experiences but not necessarily on the way to get a job. So that's the very shorthand of it. But yeah, so it's been taking up a lot of time, just different preparations, different floor speeches and that kind of stuff. But it was good, very rewarding. It's a big bill, great initiative, very important.
Well, and how are you staying focused? Are you fueling some of that energy through your diner tour? And as a follow-up, do you have any diner highlights from this week?
Well, yeah. Last Sunday, I went to the Handy's Lunch Diner in Burlington.
I used to live right around the corner from there.
Did you really? Okay. Yeah, so you
God,
know
it's still there.
It's still there.
And it's been there since like the 40s or 50s or something?
1945. Yep. And Earl Handy is the third generation. He's been there since 1996. And it's a classic horseshoe-shaped diner counter, and there's no other seats in it. And I sat down at the counter with two guys I was with, but the corner of the counter is a prize seating. But then it's just this diner etiquette. If somebody comes in with a bigger party, you just move down. You don't even ask, you just move down. So it's pretty cool. And they have a Monte Cristo monster sandwich. I mean, did you ever try that?
I do not believe I did.
I think it's 5 layers of French toast with eggs and ham in between the layers of French toast. And no, that's called the Chuck Norris. I'm sorry, not the Monte Cristo. It's the Chuck Norris sandwich. And the record for eating it, one of the patrons told me, is 6 minutes. So this guy, pretty big guy, he took 16 minutes to eat it. So, he did get the record. Slacker, yeah. But great, hot coffee, bottomless. And then tomorrow I'm going to hit the Windsor Diner. Haven't been there for a long time, probably 30 years. So time to do that. And then also there's an event up at Danowitz. It's a lunch at Danowitz tomorrow to benefit Ukraine and relief efforts in Ukraine. So last week I was in Ludlow, Saturday night. There was another dinner. Yeah, at the church in Ludlow. Church. Yeah, so they served 143 takeaway meals, plus another, 60, 70 meals to people who are sitting there. So it was phenomenal. It was really great. And the pastor, Michelle Fountain, who I've known for a long time, she gave a great prayer and that kind of stuff, but it was just a really great event, all locals sitting down, and just the epitome of a church supper. It's really good.
I believe they raised $12,000 putting that event on, is what I read in the paper this morning.
Well, that's great. I mean, just everybody cooked lasagna and brought it in. I think is it the Quilting Circle that cooked the lasagna? I might have that wrong. But they cooked the lasagna and brought it in, and then other people made desserts. I mean, it was phenomenal. Great stuff.
Good. Well, Representative Kimbell, thank you for your time, and I'll leave you with any parting shot or thought or comment or gripe, whatever you have.
This is for the legislature. This is halfway through the session, and so we're just starting to get the bills that they passed, and they're just starting to get the bills that we passed in terms of the Senate and the House. And now is when the great negotiations start happening, and that's
the sausage making, if you will.
It is. I mean, the Senate passed, let's just call it $100 million in economic development programs, and we passed $41 million in workforce development. We didn't pass anything in economic development, and they didn't pass anything in workforce. So now we have to come to the table, because it's the same pot of money, and figure out, okay, who gets what. So we're a long way from the finish line, but at least we know that we're in the race.
You think you'll be on track to finish up by mid-May?
I certainly hope so. Yeah. We got 6 weeks, right? 7 weeks, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for spending time with us.
Workforce. That's what we're on.